Thanks for staying tuned. It's still iBrand Daybreak. Now it's time to bring you up to speed with the major stories making our various dailies, and we'll start with the Punch newspaper, where the major headline here reads, Adulterated fuel, marketers fear court cases, federal government hints at compensation for damaged vehicles. And that story you can find on page 19. It has stand first, the first being customers having problems with fuel suing outlets, arresting owners, says marketers. You also have another stand first that reads, 300 million litres arrive in Lagos as NNPC assures customers of 20-day supply. As I said earlier, that story is on page 19. To the earpiece of the paper, where you have NIMC portal, telcos bow to pressure, begin server configuration to VNIN platform. That story is on page 24. You also have foreign treatment. Reps propose 7-year imprisonment, 500 million naira fine for officials. That's on page 8. You have on page 7, ACF tackles Zakiri Delu on Southern presidency, says constitution must prevail. And you also have another story that reads, we assembled 100 presidential materials, says 2022 committee, and that's on page 2. Now to the bottom piece of the paper, you have Wike lent support as EFCC rearranges Jang for 6.3 billion naira fraud. That's the former Plateau governor. That story you can find on page 17. You also have Zamfara Assembly begins process to impeach Matawali's deputy. That story is on page 16. And police suspect robbery. Gunmen in military uniform kill Ogun businessman, flee with car and money. That story is on page 4 and 6. And finally, 5.2 billion naira fraud. Jam ex-registrar operated 8 foreign firms, says aid. And that story is on page 8.
All right, let's take you to the Nation newspaper to check out the big stories there. The biggest story here reads, government will unravel how toxic petrol was imported. And that's also having riders. Fear grips Petroleum Ministry Department. Scarcity spreads to Oshun. And also there's a story on page 2. Tinubu Akeredolu greet Fayemi at 57. Also, we have minister accuses ASU of blackmail. That also coming from the Nation newspaper this morning. With the riders, their demands are being met. Union gives condition to avert strike. And on the top banner of the headlines here, we have Oyo government, IBEDC clash over 850 million naira debt. That story can be found on page 3. And also 286 Americans, Europeans, others acquire Nigerian citizenship. That's on page 2. And moving on to page 3, we have operators groan over rise in aviation fuel by 110%. Oyetola, Lasso, Adeoti face APC screening today. Those are some of the stories on the front page of the Nation newspaper.
I'll move on finally now to the last paper for review today, and that's Business Day, where the headline here reads, Dirty Petrol Saga questions NNPC role as sole importer. That story is on page 30 of Business Day. Also on page 30, you have investments in food drives retail rebound. And finally on Business Day newspaper, you have more pain for small businesses as diesel price rises by 24%. And that's on page 31.